How's it going, YouTube? It's Broxton Comics here, and what you're about to watch is my previously recorded deck profile for Pendulum Magicians, and you'll hear me explain in the video that I took it to locals this past weekend, and it did playtest really well, but unfortunately, I took my eyes off of it for a couple of minutes, and it ended up stolen. So everything that you see in this deck profile, I don't really have anymore. So Archfleet Eccentric is gone, my Apex Avions, Ebon Illusion Magician, all of the money cards are gone. So everything that you've seen in this deck profile is my personal build that I wish I could have played for a longer period of time, but unless I can get the deck back before this video is uploaded, then there's no point in me filming this. So if anybody was there, Waxahachie Hastings, and you have a chibi Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck box, got both of Yugi and Kaiba and their monsters on the sides, and there's like a YCS token at the front of the box, please come forward with it because I really want it back, and I hate myself so much for leaving it behind like that and not paying attention. So ways to message me are down in the description box for Facebook and Twitter. So yeah, I'm already having to rebuild Pendulum Magicians as it is, so this is really all I can do. So yeah, you're about to see my personal build for Pendulum Magicians, and there's nothing more I can do than say that, so hopefully you guys enjoy the deck profile. How's it going, YouTube? It's Broxton Comics here, and today I'll be bringing you guys my deck profile for Pendulum Magicians for December of 2015. Now, if you guys haven't seen my structure deck video, so go check that out, please. Now, this is actually being recorded before I go to locals, so anything that I say before I go to locals is completely hypothetical. This deck does win me a lot of games, but it doesn't win them all, so just be aware of that. I think it is pretty competitive as of right now. I know that the elusive Pepe is going to wreck this deck once we get Pendulum Sorcerer in Bosch, which is still about a month away. So until then, this is the variant that I play. You can play it in so many other ways. This is the way I choose to run it. I am missing a couple of things for the side deck, but that really doesn't matter. But I'll still go through my choices for the side deck later on. So in all honesty, though, the side deck is actually not fit for this current format because I'm actually playing Mask of Restrict, and this is for the Monarch format that we'll be getting in January as well. So just keep that in mind. You could replace those for anything else, but this is going to be my deck profile for then. So now that the structure deck is out, I finally have the entire main deck, and I'm really excited to get into this, so let's get into it. So we're going to start off, of course, with the 3 Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon. This is kind of your bread and butter of the entire deck. He does pretty much everything you want. You fusion, synchro, exceeds, and of course Pendulum with this guy. So he does so much for you. His monster effect is just as good with inflicting double battle damage, so keep that in mind. If you don't want to exceed, his monster effect is really, really nice. And 2500 is occasionally hard to get over, so be aware of that this is really nice. Next up is 3 copies of Dragon Pit Magician. This is one of your best scales in the entire deck, a scale of 8, and his pendulum effect is really, really good. Once per turn, if you have a magician card in your other pendulum zone, you can discard a pendulum monster and then target a spell or trap on the field and destroy it. So this can easily wipe away back row. This deck doesn't really play MST, so this is why, in all honesty. Next up, I play 1 copy of Dragon Pulse Magician. He basically is the same thing for Dragon Pit. He's basically the same thing as Dragon Pit, only you discard a pendulum monster to destroy another monster that's on the field. He's nice. I only prefer to play 1 of him. You only really ever need 1 of him. He's a level 4, so you can normal summon him if you absolutely need to. Scale of 1, 1800 attack, so he's good if you need to waste him on your turn 1 normal summon. Next up is 3 copies of Wisdom Eye Magician, formerly known as Insight Magician. This thing makes the deck what it is. If you have a Magician or Perform a Pal card in your other Pendulum Zone, you can destroy this in the Pendulum Zone. If you do, you can replace it with any Magician Pendulum monster in your deck, except Wisdom Eye Magician, which really doesn't matter because normally you have 2 already set in the scale, so you can basically destroy 1 of these at a time and then set to scale to like whatever you want. So you need to play 3 of this as long as you can, and I don't plan on wasting any time playing any less. Next up, 3 copies of Oath Dragon Magician. I think that 3 is the best number to play in this variant, honestly. I do play Naruto, the moral leader, what I never really go into it. But this guy is really nice because it's able to recycle Pendulum Magicians and Odd Eyes monsters from your graveyard if they've ever been sent there, like for fusion or Xyz material purposes. And he's a 21 beater, which is really nice. And his effect for... his monster effect is that if it's ever normal or special summoned, you can target a magician or Odd Eyes monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. So if it's normal or special summoned, so like if in the worst case scenario you have to tribute summon this, you can still activate its effect. Normally you would pendulum summon it from the pendulum zone or the pendulum face-up monsters in extra deck, so it's really no big deal. His pendulum effect is that if you have a magician in your other scale, you can recycle a pendulum magician that's face up in your extra deck. So either way, he's really, really good. Next up, I play 2 copies of Noble Dragon Magician. This is the tuner monster for the deck that helps you make monsters like Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon. I like this at 2 for a couple of reasons. It gives me a target to discard for Pendulum Call, and the second one can be for whenever I have it in my hand. So I just feel that playing 2 is necessary because I want to see it as much as possible for Pendulum Call or just whenever I feel like I should Synchro Summon. Next up is probably my absolute favorite scale in the entire deck. This deck is very potential at making OTKs, and this is one reason. 2 copies of Xiangke Magician and 1 copy of Xiangsheng Magician. These 2 make OTKs with Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon possible. Xiangke makes Dark Rebellion level 4, Xiangsheng makes Dark Rebellions now level 4, originally a rank 4 obviously, equal to that of a monster with a different level on the field. So basically you have this, you have Dark Rebellion out and Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, you overlay them and make Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon, which I think is kind of the mascot for the deck. You don't really make it all the time. You really just make it whenever you know for sure you have game, your opponent doesn't have any back row to respond with. So this is definitely my favorite Pendulum scale in the entire deck. Next up is Time Gazer Magician. I will admit that in my earlier testing I was playing Stargazer over Time Gazer, but I didn't realize how much more consistent this would be because it stops your opponent from activating trap cards in the battle phase whenever one of your Pendulum monsters attacks. And that is really, really strong. And he's also the scale of 8, so do keep that in mind. You really are not playing this deck right if you're not playing at least 1 copy of Time Gazer Magician. Next up is the 3 copies of Performapal Skull Crobat Joker. This is your normal summon search for everything you need in the deck. Odd Eyes monsters, Pendulum Magicians, and Performapal monsters, except himself, obviously. As I said in the deck opening, this is literally the Stratos for the deck because it's a level 4 and 1800 attack. You cannot go wrong with playing this at any other number. Maybe as time goes on, it'll be reduced to 2, maybe 1. If we get more support that makes this card inconsistent, but for now, you have to play 3 of this because it is just so damn good. Now moving away from the Performapal and Magician monsters in the deck, I play 2 copies of Luster Pendulum the Draco Slayer. This makes one of my absolute favorite plays with Ignister Prominence. I don't always set him in the scale, but when I do, it's normally for Sky Iris, actually. He's an 1850 beater, so if you can't Synchro, he still can get over a few things. Next up is 1 copy of Archfiend Eccentric. I would play more if I could afford more copies, honestly, but I got this back in October when it was like $40-ish, and I paid exactly 40 at Dallas YCS when I went. Please don't give me any more hate over that, seriously. But Archfiend Eccentric is good at any number, I think. You can honestly play this at any number, but if you don't have access to this, MST is always an option. So that's it for all of the Pendulum monsters. Everything else, I play 3 copies of Mist Valley Apex Avion and the Dark Magician. Apex Avion in this deck is OP. This thing stops so many things from happening. If you can get multiples in 1 turn, I think you have game, in all honesty. And then the Dark Magician, that gorgeous Arcana art. I cannot stress how much I've waited for this, and us as a player base, in all honesty. The Dark Magician is in here for the sole purpose of Ebon Illusion Magician, which I'll get to later. This thing is so strong. It's not even funny. So yeah, Apex Avion and the Dark Magician. These guys are absolutely fantastic. I won't have them any other way, at least in this variant. I'll probably move on to Pepe if I can ever afford the Pendulum Sorcerers, but for now, this is my build, and I love it to pieces. That's it for the monsters. It's quite the hefty monster lineup, as you guys have probably learned by now. So I love playing it. I love playing this number. So moving on, 2 copies of Odd Eyes Fusion. Yeah, polymerization does the same thing, but Odd Eyes Fusion is really nice because it just is. I don't really have any words to describe it. I'm glad that I picked them up when I did. Next up is 3 copies of Pendulum Call. And my god, this thing is so damn good. This is what makes the deck so much more consistent. I'm not gonna lie, in some of my earliest drafts I was actually playing Upstart Goblin and 3 of this, which hypothetically does sound good, but later testing, as I got more into the deck, I kind of realized that Upstart Goblin is relatively inconsistent in the deck. It clogs up space for more monsters and more spells, obviously, so yeah. Obviously, as I said before, Noble Dragon Magician is the card I like to pitch most of all with Pendulum Call, because you can activate its effect in the graveyard, and honestly, Noble Dragon Magician is the level eater for Pendulum Editions, and that's why it makes Odd Eyes Meteor Burst viable. Finally, for the spells, 3 copies of Sky Iris, formerly known as Sky Arc. I think that would have been funny if they put... I wonder what it would have been like just to keep it Sky Arc, because it would have hinted at Arc 5. But Sky Iris is good because you're able to protect your Performapal Magician and Odd Eyes monsters in your Pendulum zones from being targeted by your opponent's card effects. And then once per turn, during your main phase, you're able to destroy 1 card on your field, doesn't matter what kind of card, and search your deck for any Odd Eyes card, which is obviously Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon or the Fusion spell. And eventually, Odd Eyes Gravity Dragon and Odd Eyes Advent, the ritual that we'll be getting in Bosch. So this thing is going to be even more viable once we get those. And I can't wait for those. So that's it for the spells. It is a very small spell lineup, as you can see, but it's really okay. And finally, just for the traps, I played 3 copies of Royal Decree. As you can obviously tell, this deck doesn't really rely on traps, and this thing is clutch. I'm not gonna lie. This thing, just activating this during the end phase, and your opponent really can't respond to it unless they have MST, which really in this format, I don't see floating around too often. So I think Royal Decree is extremely strong in this deck. And playing 3 of it just makes it all the merrier. So that's an even 40 card deck. I won't have it any other way, as I've said already. So moving on to the extra deck, playing 2 copies of the Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon. This thing I love, just to special summon in general. Returns an attack position monster your opponent controls to the hand, and then once per turn, you're able to return a Pendulum monster that's in your extra deck to the main deck to negate the card or activation that your opponent chooses to play and destroy it. So essentially, it's another Apex Avian. It's really good for defense because it's a 3k defense instead of an offense, which in some scenarios I actually really like. It's a level 7 like every other Odd Eyes monster that's been around, and with good intent. Next up for the Synchros, 1 Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon. You only really ever need 1 of this. It is good probably in other builds that play more variants, better variants probably, but it's really good if you want to make a rank 7 viable. Next up is Clearwing Synchro Dragon. Clearwing is my other option if I don't want to go for Odd Eyes Meteor Burst when I know I have game and I don't want to, like, just make my opponent even more salty, but let's face it, in this kind of deck, it'll make everybody salty when they go up against this. Clearwing is just really nice. It gives me another option to go for if I haven't used Odd Eyes, or if I haven't and got Bomb List or anything like that. If we don't have the Royal Decrees, which by late game we should have out already. So yeah. Next up is 2 copies of Ignister Prominence, the Blasting Draco Slayer. This is literally the deck's only out to Cosmo Dark Destroyer, and pretty soon Dark Eclipser, which is so much more superior. But this is the only out because it doesn't target cards, and I've loved that since the Clash of Rebellions format. I'm so happy that I picked these up in the Clash of Rebellions format. So yeah. For the Xyz, Dark Rebellion, Castell, and Trapeze Magician. Trapeze Magician literally makes this deck OTK central because it allows you to choose any monster you control and let it attack twice, which is so damn busted. It may get destroyed in the end phase, but again, OTK based, pretty much. Dark Rebellion, obviously. Castell, all 3 of these are pretty obvious. In one of my earlier builds, I was actually playing the Oversight Magician, which was another V-Jump promo for Japan, but we're not getting that until Bosch, which has just recently been confirmed, and I'm not sure if it's going to have a name change. I hope it doesn't, but it might, like Wisdom Eye Magician. I was also playing the Patol Mias engine with Diamond, but because Dolls got killed by the last ban list. There's no point in playing it until we get Cyber Dragon Infinity. So these right now I think are the only viable rank 4s that Pendulum Magicians really need. Norito, the Moral Leader, stops a spell or trap from being activated and destroys it. 27 beater, so you can't go wrong. Ebon Illusion Magician, as I mentioned earlier, this thing is so nice. Any 2 level 7s, normally in any other situation you probably rank it up from this, but I hardly ever go for this in all honesty. I'd probably put another rank 4 in if I didn't have Norito. But Ebon Illusion Magician is good because you're able to essentially rescue Rabbit for any normal spellcaster type monster you want, such as Dragon Pit Magician or the elusive Dark Magician. And whenever a normal spellcaster type monster you control declares an attack, you can target a card on your opponent's field and banish it. So yeah, Ebon Illusion Magician is definitely worth playing. Next up, number 11 Big Eye, just to get monsters out of the way that I can't run over. Getting control of them for a little bit is fun. Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, if I can't OTK in one go, then going this into main phase 2 is hilarious. They can't respond to anything without taking damage. Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon, this thing is so strong, just so strong. Negates attacks, gets you a free Odd Eyes monster from grave. I can't say any more than that. Actually, until recently, I was almost completely unaware of its effect from when it's destroyed, you can special summon an Odd Eyes monster from your extra deck, which is really dumb because we have so many Odd Eyes choices. We have 2 Vortex Dragon, which it doesn't matter because we can play it. Same thing with Odd Eyes Meteor Burst. We can play our Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon if we have that in the extra deck. It's just so damn good. And finally, Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon, which is my mascot for the entire deck. If we can get this off, which a lot of times I can, it is fantastic to play. The 1,000 damage for every monster that this card destroys is dumb. Attacks 3 times, dumb. This card in general is just dumb. And then a YCS token. Thought I'd go ahead and throw that in. So that's it for the main and extra deck. For the side deck, 3 copies of Wavering Eyes. Again, this is kind of for the future format whenever we get the Monarchs. So it's not really geared towards this current format, but I think the majority of it is moderate in the current format. So 3 Wavering Eyes, this is good for just about any format that plays Pendulums, and since we've got so many coming up later this year, 2016, these are definitely going to be very handy. Wavering Eyes, if you can get all 4 effects off in one go, I think you've essentially won. This is good for yourself if you haven't used Pendulum Call, same if your opponent hasn't, if you're going in a mirror match. Magispectors, Ignites, I think Ignites can get really salty over this because I don't think they would have much to respond to after they've just cut through their decks so much, resetting their Pendulum scale so often. This was actually recommended to me by my judge at Locals, 2 copies of Zombie World. This actually also stops Magispectors because all their spell and traps require them to tribute wind spellcaster types, and this field spell turns them all into zombies. So they really can't do anything with their spells and traps if this is on board. So hypothetically, this thing is busted in the Magispector format. I'm missing 1 more copy, but I'm going to be playing 2 copies of Poisonous Winds also for the Magispector format. The match, whatever you want to say. But I think this is going to be really nice. It's basically a Vanity's Emptiness that's exclusive to Wind monsters. So yeah, I hope to pick up another one pretty soon. Next up is 3 copies of Imperial Iron Wall. I don't think I'll ever see a format go by where this isn't decent at some point. This stops Cosmos from doing their shit. This stops just about anything that requires banishing. Rogue decks like Chaos, things like that. But most of all, Cosmos. I need to rarity bump these to ultra rare sometime. And finally, of course, again for the future, 3 copies of Massive Restrict. So, yeah, I gotta rarity bump these as well. But otherwise, you can change so much in the side deck. But that's just my build, so yeah. And with that, YouTube, that concludes my Pendulum Magician deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really sincerely do. If you guys enjoyed it, please give it the big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and leave your comments down below on your thoughts for this deck. I'm looking forward to taking this to Locals and bringing you guys dual videos for it so much. So it's definitely going to be satisfying to play at full power. It's going to be sad to see cards like Wisdom Eye Magician get hit because it's obvious it's going to get hit because it's already limited in the OCG, but they've had it for a while, so we'll have plenty of time. So that's it, YouTube. I'm Broxton Comics, signing out.